Good evening to you. This is Dalsan TV English News. My name is Abdelrazak Ali. Let's have a look at some of the stories that are making headlines here in Somalia. Galmudug State beat Hirshabelle football team in regional state tournament final. UN Security Council convenes emergency meeting on Somalia-Ethiopia crisis. Government confirms the execution of military operation destroying key Al-Shabaab leaders. Now welcome back. Mogadishu Stadium, dominant for 3 decades, sprang back to life in a spectacular fashion as it hosted a capacity crowd of 65,000 passionate fans. Now moving on to our next story, the United Nations Security Council is scheduled for urgent consultation to address the intensifying dispute between Ethiopia and Somalia. This meeting, set under the Peace and Security in Africa agenda, follows Somalia request citing concerns over Ethiopia actions in the Horn of Africa. The urgent session, prompted by Somalia's request under Article 35 of the UN Charter, focuses on the January 1st Memorandum of Understanding (MOU) between Ethiopia and Somaliland.
The United Nations Security Council is scheduled for urgent consultations to address the intensifying dispute between Ethiopia and Somalia. This meeting, set under the Peace and Security in Africa agenda, follows Somalia's request citing concerns over Ethiopian actions in the Horn of Africa. The urgent session, prompted by Somalia's request under Article 35 of the UN Charter, focuses on the January 1st Memorandum of Understanding between Ethiopia and Somaliland. Somalia's acting Foreign Minister, Ali Umar, has described the MOU as a violation of Somalia's constitution. The situation has drawn significant attention, with international bodies voicing concerns over potential regional destabilization. Somalia asserts that Ethiopia's 50-year lease of sea access in exchange for recognizing the Republic of Somaliland constitutes an unlawful transgression of its sovereignty. The meeting aims to address the MOU's broader political and security implications. The League of Arab States, or LAS, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation have condemned the agreement, with the LAS stating that such actions violate international law and jeopardize the overall territorial integrity of the Somali state. Meanwhile, Ethiopia maintains its stance as outlined in a January 26th letter to the Council, arguing that the MOU paves the way for Ethiopia to secure access to a sea outlet based on commercial bases and mutually acceptable terms in line with international norms. The Security Council's discussions are expected to center on fostering dialogue and de-escalating tensions. UN Security General Antonio Guterres, in a phone call with Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, underscored this approach, expressing hope that all parties will engage in a peaceful and constructive dialogue and refrain from any actions that could further escalate the situation.
The Sri Lankan Fisheries Department has reported that Sri Lanka fishing trawler named Lorenzo Push 4 with 6 crew members has been abducted by Somali pirates. The incident occurred in the Arabian Sea far from the Sri Lankan maritime boundary. Susantha, the Director General of the Department of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, addressed the media to provide details of the incident.
The Sri Lanka Fisheries Department has reported that a Sri Lankan fishing trawler named Lorenzo Putha 4 with 6 crew members on board has been taken hostage by Somali pirates. The incident occurred in the Arabian Sea, far from the Sri Lankan maritime boundary. Susantha Kahawata, the Director General of the Department of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, addressed the media to provide details of the incident. The multi-day fishing trawler Lorenzo Putha 4 embarked on his journey from Sri Lanka on January 12th, setting sail with the crew on board. However, approximately 1,160 nautical miles away from the Sri Lankan maritime boundary, the vessel fell victim to the pirates, leaving the Sri Lankan authorities deeply concerned for the safety and well-being of the crew members. Director General Kahawata emphasized that Sri Lankan authorities have been unable to establish direct contact with the abducted crew and have relied on information obtained from nearby vessels to gather details about the incident. This lack of communication has added to the urgency of the situation, prompting the Sri Lankan government to take immediate action to secure the release of the abducted fishermen. Efforts are underway to engage with relevant international authorities and agencies to address this alarming situation. The Sri Lankan government is working tirelessly to establish lines of communication and negotiate with the pirates for the safe return of the crew members. The abduction of the Sri Lankan fishing trawler highlights the need for enhanced maritime security measures and international cooperation to combat piracy and ensure the safety of seafarers in these vulnerable areas. The Sri Lankan government is actively coordinating with international partners and neighboring countries in the region to pool resources, share intelligence, and devise a comprehensive strategy to address maritime piracy effectively. Efforts are being made to strengthen naval patrols, surveillance, and intelligence gathering operations in order to deter and respond to such incidents swiftly. The Sri Lankan authorities will continue to provide updates on the progress of the negotiations and the efforts being undertaken to bring an end to this distressing ordeal.
Now, moving on to our next story, the Somali military has targeted Al-Shabaab members, including high-ranking officials within the organization. The successful strike took place in Somalia's Mudug region. The Somali government confirmed successful execution of a military operation resulting in the destruction of a vehicle carrying key Al-Shabaab leaders. The targeted attack occurred in the Ali Haile area, located at the border between Midul Shabelle and Galgaduud. The operation focused on a vehicle known to transport Al-Shabaab members, including high-ranking figures within the organization. The successful strike is part of an intensified campaign by the government to curb the influence of Al-Shabaab in the region. In a statement, the government highlighted the recent increase in air operations against Al-Shabaab, which has led to substantial losses for the group, including the deaths of numerous militants and leaders. Earlier this week, the first US acknowledged attack of the year took place in the lower Juba region, targeting Al-Shabaab members. Regional and military officials said Thursday that the strike killed at least 20 Al-Shabaab militants in central Somalia. According to a separate statement from the Somali National Army, the strike killed more than 25 militants. It destroyed a house where the group's leaders were meeting, as well as a garage where car bombs were being prepared. Al-Shabaab is a militant group that operates primarily in Somalia. The group is known for its brutal tactics, including suicide bombings, assassinations, and guerrilla warfare. Al-Shabaab has carried out numerous attacks targeting government officials, African Union Transition Mission in Somalia ATMIS troops, and civilian populations. They have also been responsible for high-profile attacks beyond Somalia's borders, including Kenya. Al-Shabaab has exploited a political instability, weak governance, and lack of insecurity in Somalia to establish control over parts of the country. They have imposed harsh punishment on those perceived to violate their interpretation of Sharia. The group has also been involved in various criminal activities to fund its operations such as extortion, taxation on business, and charcoal smuggling. Additionally, they have exploited the vulnerability of Somali youth by recruiting them as fighter and suicide bombers. The Somali Prime Minister, Hamza Abdi Barre, has appointed 2 ministers and replaced them with 2 others. The Prime Minister appointed Mohamed Abdi Mareye as the Minister of Agriculture Irrigation and succeeded by Mohamed Madobe Nuno. Additionally, Abdisalan Abdi Dahe was appointed Minister of Public Works, succeeding Ismail Abdirahman.
Somali Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre dismissed 2 cabinet ministers and appointed their replacement on Monday, leaving the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and International Security still vacant. Prime Minister Barre appointed Mohamed Abdi Mareye as the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation, succeeding Mohamed Madobe Nuno. Additionally, Abdisalan Abdi Dahi was appointed Minister of Public Works, succeeding Ismail Abdirahman. The vacant ministerial positions in the government include the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Internal Security and Women. Ministry of Women Khadija Mohammed Diria passed away in Djibouti last month, and the Minister of Security was appointed as the country's ambassador to Qatar. The former Minister of Foreign Affairs resigned last year to run for the Puntland state presidential election, which took place in Garowe in December.
Well, that story concludes the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for always tuning in to Dalsan TV English News. Remember to subscribe and follow Dalsan TV social media channels for more updates. Till we meet again, we wish you a lovely evening.